All right, welcome to Maximus Live. This is our 75th episode. It's amazing that we've done so many of these so far. And for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, I'm Dr. Cam. I'm the CEO of Maximus. I'm also a licensed clinical psychologist and psychiatry professor. I do psychotherapy and performance psychology with top CEOs, VCs, and professional athletes. And we also provide it essentially as a benefit to being a subscriber to our company. If you are a member of the or subscriber to the King or Lover protocols, are two products that you can check out on MaximusTribe.com. We not only provide pharmacological medication that helps you enhance your testosterone and your sexual performance, but we provide health coaching to help you optimize your diet, exercise, sleep, stress, focus, and relationships. So if you have any questions or like to get coached on any of those things, happy to do so. If you're on Instagram, you can type in your questions or we can do a live stream. And same thing, we'll hopefully have some folks who are going to join us on Zoom in a little bit, and some folks on Twitter Spaces and YouTube Live as well. All right, so every week we like to start out with what I call a weekly unpopular opinion as people kind of file in, and then I'll do Q&A for the rest of the show. So this week's unpopular opinion is I really think in the realm of health optimization, it's important to have strong opinions weakly held. And the reason I say that is because it's interesting to see sort of the health fads come and go and how people are very tightly adhered to them, and they think it's like the next best thing since sliced bread until the next thing comes along, right? It's very common, for instance, people will ask my opinion about intermittent fasting, ketogenic diets, or whatever sort of the hot new thing, carnivore diets is that comes along. And it's interesting because to me as a psychologist, they very much remind me of almost like cult-like phenomenon where people become almost like true believers of them. And I think a lot of this is actually really perpetuated by influencers who become known by that thing. There's literally like carnivore doctors that eat nothing but meat, and that becomes their brand. And it's not that they're right or wrong. The issue with it is I think it leaves very little room for them to ever change or update their opinion because if you become known for that particular thing, then it becomes tough for you as the carnivore doctor to be like, hey, maybe a little bit of fruits are not bad. Or, hey, maybe actually doing a cyclical ketogenic diet, like our great folks over at Keto Gains over here promote. Yeah, maybe a little bit of carbs before your workout actually enhances your ability to engage in strength and power training. But you have to have sort of the psychological and brand flexibility to be like, hey, I've updated my opinions, or maybe there's more research, or maybe there's more experience that we've developed, and we have to update your theories. That's essentially how science works, right? With new data, you have to be able to update your opinions and theories over time. But I think in the era of sort of like cult-like religiosity when it comes to certain health and dietary fads, people are very loath to change because they build their entire sort of brands, and companies even around that, which I think is very dangerous. And that's why I really like the adage of strong opinions weakly held. I think it's fine to have a strong opinion about a certain thing, but it's important to hold it weakly as well, so that if and when there's opportunities for you to update those ideas or theories, there's an opportunity for you to do so without losing face. Really good example of this, I actually tweeted about this, was Daryush Mozaffarian, who's the Dean of Nutrition at Tufts. Very smart guy, cardiologist, has an MD and a PhD, very credible on paper. But, I think there's some issues with this. They came out with sort of like a scoring system to quantify the health of food. And it very much promotes, I think, plant-based diets. It's very anti-meat. And so literally, I think the worst food in this chart that I sent out, which on a scale of like 0 to 100 of healthiness was red meat. I think it was like a 26 out of 100, which is silly because there's no randomized clinical trials that show that red meat increases cancer risk or that it's harmful to your health. In fact, if you're certainly in the animal-based diet camp, people would argue it should actually be the staple of your diet because our ancestors essentially ate, large mammals and primarily probably ate red meat, whether from woolly mammoths, elks, and kind of that kind of animal. The interesting thing, though, was when you looked at some of the foods that they were actually recommending in the chart, it just didn't even pass the common sense or sniff test. Like frosted mini wheats were considered one of the green or healthy things. And yeah, there's someone on Instagram commenting the score that puts Pop Tarts and cereal higher than eggs and meats. Yeah, I was pointing out, I was like, boiled eggs were considered less healthy than a sugary processed cereal, and I was like, it doesn't even make any sense. And so, I think these are the challenges. Sometimes we get so wedded to our ideologies that say, hey, a low-fat diet is the best diet, which maybe there's a context in which you have family history of hypercholesteremia, and maybe you do need to eat individually a little bit lower fat. But to sort of take that theory, turn it into a scoring system, and thus say, well, anything that has fat, even like a hard-boiled egg, is therefore deleterious to your health, and that you should choose frosted mini wheats over an egg, just starts to become ridiculous, right? This is when you lose the first principle of it. And I think it's really how I think people get turned into sort of cult followers and also engage in really unhealthy practices. I'll share another interesting anecdotal story. I was actually talking to a friend and colleague of mine who's a physician, super smart guy, literally a medical doctor, and he was sharing his testosterone levels with me. His testosterone levels were 375 total T, which is for a young, healthy, fit guy. It was very low. In fact, it's like somewhere just slightly above the 2.5 percentile. So he didn't quite qualify for, let's say, being diagnosed as secondary hypogonadal. Usually you have to have a testosterone score under 300 twice in order to meet the clinical cutoff for that diagnosis. But he's just about as close as you can get for a young guy. And so I was talking to him. I was like, what's going on? Your testosterone's really low. Like, what are you doing in terms of your health behaviors? And he's like, well, I did a lipid test and my lipids were high. And so I switched to a vegetarian diet and try to cut out as much fat as possible. And I was like, well, okay, you're doing this to yourself. And I was like, well, what's going on with your lipids that you decided to make that change? He literally sent me his lipids, and I'm like, look, I'm not a lipidologist. It's not my area of expertise, but I can at least look over it and have a general sense of what it should be. He had like slightly high LDL, which is not unusual, and LDL in and of itself is not really predictive of cardiovascular disease. I was like, did you look at your small particles? Did you do more of an advanced lipid panel? He's like, no, I didn't. And I was like, okay, well, go work with a good cardiologist and get a proper workup done before you make any decisions on this. Because on the basis of just like a really basic lipid panel, slightly elevated LDL, it's not a reason to cut out all meat. His HDL, the so-called good cholesterol, was fine. His triglycerides were fine. And I was like, look, probably the best predictor out of the variables that you've measured is your triglyceride to HDL ratio, which is fine. And his blood sugar levels, by the way, were great. And so I was like, you don't seem unhealthy. And for you to drastically change your diet because you got scared about this lipid panel has resulted in you eating an inferior diet. Vegetarian diets we know are quite frankly inferior. We know it's associated with lower testosterone and sperm count. And that was true in terms of his results. His testosterone was literally in the gutter. And so I was like, okay, let's stop that, get you back on an animal-based diet. Now, go get a lipid panel, a proper lipid panel, like a cardio IQ advanced lipid panel if you're really concerned or you have a family history, and work with a good cardiologist on that. But, you took sort of incomplete data, you interpreted it in a way that was not necessarily evidence-based, you changed your whole diet, and now your testosterone's in the gutter and you feel terrible. And, it was really interesting to me how even a really smart person who's literally a physician himself led to a series of conclusions that kind of put him in a worse place of health than someone who, ironically, most people don't even get their lipids measured. Most people, are not super aware of various diets. If he had literally just kept doing the same thing, he would have been better off than someone who was ironically smarter and more advanced and more knowledgeable was. And he was good intentioned, right? Like he was like, I want to engage in preventative health. I obviously want to not develop heart disease. But it led him in the wrong direction, and it actually made things worse. And that's why I always tell people smart people oftentimes are the most easily influenced, more or gullible, and sometimes are the least healthy people because they become convinced that the thing that they're doing is right. There's a lot of people out there that, in fact, will tell you that a plant based or vegetarian diet is superior. If you fall down the rabbit hole of nutritionfacts.com and Michael Greiger and a bunch of people who are basically cult propagandists, and you believe it and you think, oh, I am doing the right thing for myself when you're not. So that's why I think it's really important to um, always start with first principles, question your logic, obviously consult experts. But like I said, strong opinions loosely held. I don't think it was terrible for him to be like, okay, let me explore maybe some other dietary options, or let me go talk to some other people about interpreting my lipid panels. But I think to jump to conclusions, stick to it for months, tank your testosterone and feel terrible. I was like, man, I feel bad for you. I think you engaged in a lot of unnecessary pain and suffering. Now, fortunately, I gave him all this coaching. He's gonna fix his diet, go back to eating, meat and dairy and animal-based diet, get proper lipid panel done. Hopefully, jump on our protocol in order to restore his testosterone levels. But it was such an interesting story of how you can get led astray, and I think it's really, really important to be mindful of that. So, my opinion, by the way, the best two sources of information, well, three best sources of information. One, I do think the scientific literature is really important to follow. Unfortunately, in nutrition, it's a bunch of nutritional epidemiology, and that associational data is not useful. So, you have to be very picky and choosy about what science that you're using in order to make conclusions about what to eat, how to exercise, etc. Second, I actually am a big fan of following ancestral practices. If it's been around for thousands of years, it probably suggests that it's useful. So I do get a lot of information from traditional hunter-gatherer societies about how much vitamin D levels they have, how they eat, how they move, and I think that's useful. And then third, I think the athletic community is also very useful because high performers test a lot of things. They're essentially amateur scientists, and they will abandon things if it's not leading to high performance because it's so competitive that, look, you can tell whether it works. That's why there's not a lot of athletes, quite frankly, on ketogenic diets who are doing power or sprint type of work because it's better for endurance exercise than it is sort of power sprint kind of workouts, and not optimal for bodybuilding, for instance, hypertrophy, etc. It increases cortisol too much. So I think in order to find out the best health information, I think you need to triangulate literally from the ancestral community, the athletic community, and the scientific community. Take the best, leave the rest, and ultimately try stuff on yourself. Now, I do think it's important to listen to your body and see how it turns out, but it's easy for us to even fool ourselves sometimes. So I wouldn't totally rely on self-experience either, unless you're very meticulous about it. I'll give you one last final example. Sometimes we have people on our protocol who are like, I don't feel it. I don't feel anything. And then I'll ask them what's going on. I look at their labs. They're like, they have 3 times the amount of testosterone that they started, right? Triple their free testosterone. And I was like, it's unlikely that you're not feeling anything when you have 3 times higher testosterone. Are you paying attention to it? Are you tracking it? Like, we actually use symptom questionnaires from before and 30 days after. I bet if I looked at their symptom questionnaires in terms of their motivation, drive, energy, etc., they would have had a statistically significant increase. But maybe you don't feel a 20% difference in terms of it's not a night and day difference. But if you actually paid attention, you're like, well, I was a 5 out of 7. Now I'm a 5 out of 10. Now I'm a 7 out of 10 in terms of my motivation, let's say, or my energy levels have gone from a 4 to a 6. That is actually a significant improvement. That's a 50% improvement. But you're like, I don't know, I'm not feeling like I drank 5 cups of coffee. Well, nothing's going to make you feel like that. And so your expectations have to be realistic too. It's not steroids. You're not going to get huge overnight. So you have to temper your expectations, but be able to track even subtle changes, because subtle changes that accumulate or compound over time can actually become big changes. But that's why it's important to journal, to quantify, to track these things. And then when you keep a journal or you use questionnaires and you repeat them over time, you can really tell whether the improvement's happening. So that's my unpopular opinion for the week. Have your strong opinions, but hold them weekly and update them with new data over time. It looks like we have someone who's joining us on Zoom. Hi, can you hear me? Oh, let's see if someone wants to go live with us. Maybe that Zoom person will hop back on. To do so, or you can hop on our Zoom if you have the invite as well. All right, but why don't we go to YouTube questions in the meantime while we're waiting folks to hop on?
We actually had this question via a customer asking, "Hi, I want to start the King Protocol. Was wondering, is it something that you're supposed to stack? Are you supposed to take it and then get off of it? Asking because I might have to move out of the country. So, is the King Protocol something that you can take and then not take, or are there serious side effects when you stop taking it?"
Yeah, it's a great question. So the question is about are there any issues with discontinuation of the King Protocol? And the answer is no. Fortunately, it's not a habit forming or dependence causing medication. And clomiphene has a half life of about 10 and a half hours, meaning that 50% of it will be out of your system if you take it in the morning by the time it's the evening time. Now, the effects that it has on boosting LH and testosterone might last a little bit longer, maybe up to a week. But essentially, what happens when you stop taking it is your testosterone levels will just go back down to where they started. So if you started out as a 400 total testosterone, or let's say 50 in terms of your free testosterone, and you double that to 800 total testosterone, 100 free testosterone, it'll just go back down to 450. So you'll go right back to where you started. And so there's not a lot of risk or downside in terms of trying it, but it is designed for indefinite daily long-term use. So if you did have to leave the country, unfortunately, yeah, you'd have to go off of our protocol because we can't prescribe medication overseas. Every country has different laws regarding telemedicine and what you can prescribe. Unfortunately, maybe when we're much bigger, that'll change. But for now, that'll be the case. So I would say, look, if you're pending on if you're clearly moving soon, yeah, you can take it for a couple months, but you'll probably have to discontinue. So I'm not sure that's going to be a great benefit. If you're going to stick around longer, I would say for at least 6 months you're going to be here. Then I think it makes a little bit more sense to be on the protocol, and then kind of go from there. But yeah, if and when you decide to discontinue, whether due to moving or for any other reason, it's not dependence or habit forming. It's not like testosterone where it suppresses your endogenous production and you need to do a post-cycle therapy or do something to restore your levels. Your levels will just naturally go back to where they were. So no, not a lot of risk there. And then I think there was a part of your question too about whether it's stackable. I don't know if that was necessarily the intention behind your question, but it is stackable with our other protocols, right? So the King protocol, which increases testosterone, is stackable with the Lover protocol, which increases blood flow, and obviously sexual performance as well. So those things are actually synergistic. You can take them together. All of our protocols are designed to be taken together or be stackable. If there's other stuff that you're taking, talk to your physician about it in terms of the medication and supplements to make sure that there aren't any contraindications. Or if you're getting medication from your primary care physician or another doctor, talk to them. Sometimes we have guys who are like, for instance, on psychiatric medication. I always tell them, go talk to your psychiatrist about whether it's a contraindication. They're the experts on that. And clomiphene itself is not contraindicated with a lot of things. But for instance, our building block supplement, which we just launched, which is kind of our essential men's multivitamin, has high doses of vitamins A, D, and K, amongst other things. But if you're taking vitamin A and D in your multivitamin already, you should discontinue that. You don't want to go you don't want to overdose or go overboard with it. So we always say check the labels. If you're taking it from our supplement, you don't need to take it. It'll essentially replace your multivitamin. So you just want to be aware of those things. And in our questionnaires, as you fill out the intakes, if there are things that are clearly contraindicated, you're not supposed to take with our protocol, like you're on nitrites for the Lover protocol, or you're on anabolic steroids or testosterone with our King protocol. We just tell people, hey, like you can't take that with our protocol. If it's something that you can discontinue, you can obviously get off of it and switch to our protocol, like with TRT. But obviously, safety is the first priority there. So it is stackable unless there's a reason for it not to be, and we do our best to make sure that there isn't any contraindications.
We had another question via Discord. This one came in not too long ago. As for the Lover Protocol, do you have to take the Lover Protocol daily to see the effects, or can you use it as a one-off when you want a boost in that department?
It's really designed for daily use. So the question was like, is the Lover Protocol for daily use, or you can take it as needed? There's a lot of ED meds that are more for as needed use. I actually think it's the wrong way to take it. Obviously, it does make sense when you want to have sex to be able to perform well, but I actually don't think it's a great idea. So this is generally what happens when people sort of take Viagra or Cialis before a sexual encounter or a wild weekend they're having. They end up taking a high dose of it, right? They're taking 10, 20 milligrams of tadalafil, which increases the risk of side effects, right? So you can have headaches, nausea. There's like lower back pain, interestingly, that sometimes happens on those higher dosages of it. Versus when you take the conservative dose, which is 5 milligrams, which is what's in our King protocol, it significantly lowers the risk of those side effects. Most guys don't have any side effects because it's just a much lower dose. Obviously, you're taking half or a quarter of those high dosages. And also your body sort of adapts a little bit. You're not developing a tolerance to the effects, but you sort of get used to it, and it's a nice steady stream of it in your bloodstream. Your blood flow is good. Your blood vessels are getting nutrients to where they need to. And so my kind of clinical observation, I would say, believe that it's better as a daily use product. The second part of it is the bremelanotide, the PT-141. That's the libido enhancing portion of it. That does seem to have an accumulatory effect in that the more that you take it on a consistent basis, it does seem to enhance libido more. Furthermore, if you sort of think about it, blood flow is generally a positive thing. Like I said, it brings nutrients to your muscles, to your brain, to obviously your ability to get strong erections. And so if you want that on a regular basis, you don't want to just take it 3 or 4 times a month. You're not getting the full sort of health benefits. That's why we really designed it as a daily protocol. And I think it's both a smarter and safer approach to take it that way. Someone on Instagram asked, is it true that my levels would double in just 30 days, or is it a 90-day thing? It's a good question. Your testosterone levels will actually probably increase within a week, but they peak at 28 days. That's what the research literature suggests. That's why we retest people generally after 30 days. Now, the reason our money-back guarantee is 90 days is sometimes you need a dose adjustment. So we don't guarantee that your levels will double, by the way. On average, they'll increase 1.5 to 2.5x. On a lower dose, you'll probably see 50, 70% improvement. If you're healthier, younger, and your health behaviors are really good, like you're sleeping well, etc., you can double your levels. For other people, they may need a higher dosage, and then that way, in month 2, you might get hopped on a higher dosage that's prescribed by the physician, and so you may go from, let's say, a 1.5x increase to a 2x increase, thus doubling your levels. So it just may take a little bit of adjustment to kind of get there, and that may take 2 or 3 months. That's why it's a 90-day guarantee. We need to just have enough time and space that if you're not getting the increase in testosterone or the improvement in how you're feeling in the first 30 days, then we obviously need to adjust your dosage and get it right. So a TLDR, oftentimes they will increase 1.5 to 2.5x within the first 30 days. In fact, like I said, you'll probably notice it within the first week, but they peak within 30 days, and they can even go even higher if we adjust your dose within 90 days. So it just depends. The other part of it, though, I'll say is it is up to you as well. The more you engage in the health behavior coaching, the better the results. Like, for instance, cortisol or stress antagonizes essentially testosterone. And so you can take all the pills that you want, but if your stress or cortisol levels are out of control, you're not sleeping well, your diet is shit, it's not going to double your levels. Maybe it'll increase it by 1.5x, but it could have doubled your levels if you had your health behavior regimen on lockdown. And so it's partly up to you as well, in that, look, you got to be somewhat responsible for your health if you're going to want to get the maximum benefit out of it. So I find that people who really take advantage of the first 30 days, engage in the health behavior coaching, clean up their diet, exercise, sleep, and addictions in terms of focus, end up doing much better in terms of getting that maximal benefit in the numbers. The last thing I'll say though is don't get too wedded to the numbers. Obviously, we do want to see an improvement. That's how you know it's working. But in the end, how you feel is more important than the numbers. There's guys who, like I said, sometimes triple their levels and they don't feel it as much. There's guys who increase 1.5x and they feel great. So it's ultimately about finding sort of the minimal effective dose. More is not always better. And look, how you feel and function is more important than a number on a lab sheet in the end. So just keep that in mind too, is in the end, we just want to, feel good and do the things that we're trying to do. Looks like, all right, got another video request. We're going to try that one more time. Hey Michael, I'm trying to accept your video request. It's just not going through, unfortunately, every time I press the accept button. So maybe try one more time or discontinue your request and then send it again. But unfortunately, Instagram is not cooperating with me today. Do you have any questions from YouTube in the meantime?
We had a question via Discord. What is LH versus FSH? If your LH increases significantly, is that something to worry about or to think about as a man?
Yeah, great question. So the question is around what is LH and what is FSH. So these are two common biomarkers that are measured when you do a blood test. And LH is luteinizing hormone. It's basically what your pituitary produces in response to the hypothalamus releasing GnRH, or gonadotropin releasing hormone. It is a gonadotropin. So gonadotropin releasing hormone releases the two gonadotropins, LH and FSH. LH basically travels from your pituitary in your brain down to your testicles and stimulates the testes to produce testosterone. So it is a key intermediary, if you will, that is the stimulator of testosterone production. FSH is also known as follicle stimulating hormone. So follicle stimulating hormone is simply put responsible for increasing your sperm production. So you can think about sort of LH as the testosterone boosting element and FSH as the fertility boosting element. And they generally go hand in hand in that when GnRH is released in a pulsatile fashion, usually every 90 minutes or so in the brain, it stimulates the production of both LH and FSH. They rise concomitantly, or they rise together, so to speak, and this stimulates the testes to produce testosterone, where the word testes comes from, and sperm. So on our protocol, that's in fact how it works, is in the brain, the estrogen receptors are being blocked, which is part of the negative feedback loop for stopping the production of LH and FSH. And so when you're blocking estrogen receptors, it stimulates more GnRH, it stimulates more LH, stimulates more FSH. So all three actually increase. And so on the before versus the after lab test, we should see your LH increasing. If it's not, then it's usually diagnostically indicative of an issue essentially with your brain's ability to produce gonadotropins, and that's a form of hypogonadism. But that doesn't apply to most people. So for most people, you'll see a nice increase in LH, which is going to increase your testosterone. Now, there is a question of like, well, is too much LH a bad thing? There's not a lot of clear research that there's a negative effect of having high LH, even LH that's slightly in the supraphysiological realm. And the reason for that is I think sometimes the body compensates and tries to produce more LH if it's not able to get as much testosterone as it needs. Sometimes the sensitivity of the Leydig cells in the testes is not super sensitive. I guess if you're super young and healthy, you don't need to produce a lot of LH to kind of get that testosterone stimulation. As we kind of get older, um, develop sort of Leydig cell insensitivity, other issues. We may need more sort of gas in order to stimulate that testosterone production. So the body will produce more LH almost to compensate and get more of that signal through and produce more testosterone. So unless the LH is like sky high, it's not necessarily a concern. There's certainly guys who take HCG, which is an injectable, essentially synthetic form of LH, for years and don't necessarily have a lot of negative health benefit issues associated with sort of an elevated synthetic form of LH. So no, there's not intrinsically and necessarily an issue with that. Now, there is a condition in which, called primary hypogonadism, where you see very high levels of LH, very low levels of testosterone. That's what I'm saying. The body's almost like trying to compensate, but it's not working in the end. No matter how much you increase the LH, testosterone just won't go up. Those folks have to go on TRT. That's less common. You generally only see it in older folks. But if that's not the case, what we're talking about here, your body will produce as much LH essentially as is needed in order to get the right amount of testosterone for you to feel optimal. And obviously, increasing LH is how our protocol works. So as long as it's done in a relatively normal way, it's not a cause for concern. In fact, that's how it should be working. All right. Someone asked, how can I get better sleep to get the full benefits of the medication? It's hard to sleep properly when your hormones are out of balance. Well, this is kind of a chicken and the egg thing. It's a good point. As your hormones become more optimal on our protocol, one of the benefits, in fact, that people do report is better sleep. In fact, there was a guy who was talking about their father, I think, was on the protocol and reported better sleep. So some of that will take care of itself, but a lot of it I actually think is really, really behavioral. There's on our Discord channel, there's a health behavior coaching or health coaching channel. It's called #healthcoaching. Go in there and we can talk about it. Or if you want to hop on a live stream, I'm happy to discuss it for you. But I'd have to understand what's going on with you. Like, what time are you going to bed? What time are you waking up? Are you waking up throughout the night? Do you have some insomnia issues? Do you have some obstructive sleep apnea issues in which you're not breathing throughout the night? Are you engaging in revenge bedtime procrastination, in which you're purposely delaying going to bed, or you're staying up late watching Netflix or television that's causing you to have sleep impairment? How's your sleep latency? Or how long is it taking you for you to fall asleep? When you're trying to fall asleep, in terms of the lights out, your eyes are closed, your head's on your pillow, are you able to fall asleep within 15 minutes or so? And if not, what's going on? Do you have anxiety? Do you have stress? Do you have depression? So there's a lot of things that I think I'd have to understand that's what's getting in the way of your sleep. So happy to talk you through that. Obviously, if you join live or on the coaching channel, type in kind of your situation, and we can see what we can do to improve your sleep. The goal would be to obviously get 7 to 9 hours on average of sleep a night in order to optimize that. So let's see if we can actually have someone hop on. Hey there.
Yo, how you doing today, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. So yeah, this me who asking the question. So yeah,
Yep.
with my sleep patterns, it like, okay, for one, I have a lot of trouble even falling asleep.
Yep.
But two, if I do fall asleep, I find myself waking up in like an hour or so. Staying up, like, it's just hard. That's why I say, like, it's hard to sleep properly when my hormones are out of balance.
Yeah, I'm not sure though it's completely caused by your hormones being out of balance. Why do you think you're having trouble falling asleep in the first place?
Oh well, yeah. For one, like, I can't keep my phone out my face. I know that I know like that's not good though. But it's just hard. Like, it's just like, especially at night, it's just hard to put the phone down sometimes. Like,
Right.
that's something I try to work on.
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like part of that is sort of like phone overuse, if you will, or problematic phone use. Yeah, I highly recommend. Do you have an iPhone?
Yes, sir. iPhone 11.
Yeah, so there's a screen time feature where you can put limits essentially. I would highly suggest doing that. In fact, if you go into essentially your settings, and I think there's a feature called Focus,
Yes, sir.
and you can go in and set like your sleep schedule. I believe there's a little sleep feature that you can turn on and put what your bedtime and wake up times are and lock your apps out essentially. So I would highly suggest after a certain period of time, I think if you go into screen time, downtime, you can actually customize it. So, like for instance, on my phone, from 11 o'clock to 7 a.m., downtime is on, which basically like limits me from ever using my phone. Now, in an emergency, I can, but it makes it really hard or annoying essentially to use any apps. Anytime I try to open an app, it's like, oh no, it's downtime. Do you want to extend it for a minute, 15 minutes for the rest of the day? So obviously don't snooze or don't ignore those prompts. But I think it's actually a very useful feature. So one, I would turn that on. Number two, I'd take your phone out of your bedroom so that you don't even put yourself in temptation's way. This is kind of one of the principles of dopamine fasting is, look, we just can't be constantly stimulated all the time. And I think it's definitely contributing to your insomnia.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what I told myself. I told myself I'm gonna work on like I even gave myself a specific time frame. I told myself after 8 o'clock, like no more phone time for me and stuff like that. But I'm a young person, so
Yeah.
I like to keep up with social media and what's going on at the time, stuff like that. So
Do it, absolutely. You should keep up with it, but do it during the day.
yeah.
You don't need to do it 24/7. You don't need to do it late at night. So let me ask you, what's getting in the way of you doing what you know you need to do?
Well, okay. Well, for one, I work like basically I work throughout kind of the whole day, so I only have like the afternoon time to
Yeah.
like to get on my phone and enjoy my phone and stuff like that. So when it's time for me to lay down, it's kind of like I'm sleepy with my phone. Like it's just like some of that stuff that I found interesting that catch my attention at the wrong time.
Right.
And I'd be like, yeah, that's why it makes it hard for me to just knock out when I want to.
So yeah, I think you put yourself in a bind in that. Look, you work a lot, you got a lot going on during the day. You do want to enjoy yourself a little bit. So what I would do is just carve out 1 hour in the evening, whatever that is. It could be like 7 to 8 o'clock, right after dinner, or whatever, reasonable time, early. I wouldn't do it kind of past 10 o'clock probably, and then go nuts. Use as much social media as you like. Go down the rabbit hole of things that interest you, but put a timer on it. Literally, it should be a countdown timer, and then the alarm should go off. Or same thing, you can put this as a feature in your app limits, where you can say, look, I'm going to put in a 1 hour limit on Instagram, for instance, every day, and I can use it, but not more than an hour. So I would do that. Ideally, do it at the same time every day, or like say within an hour of Instagram every day, or I try to use it between 7 and 8 p.m. and then stop. Use the limit. Use the alarms to break out of the hypnotic trance that we all fall into when we use social media, and then move on with your evening, right? But the thing I would not do is don't do it in bed. Don't lay down and do it. Go sit in another room in another chair, ideally, and then engage in your social media use. But the worst thing you can do is to use it in your bedroom, especially use it in your bed when you're lying down and trying to relax, because it's not really relaxing. Your body's relaxed, your mind is not relaxed. You got the dopamine flowing. It's super addictive content. It is interesting, but it's also keeping you up. It's not letting your brain wind down. You're getting blue light into your eyes, which is impairing your melatonin production and ability to fall asleep. So you need to have like a strict sort of dopamine feasting schedule in which you're using it for that hour and no more, and then move on with your life, like I said. And in the little bit of time that you have before bed, you need to do something relaxing that doesn't involve your phone. Read, listen to pure music, if it's radio, if you don't want to use your phone, or something else that is not so stimulating, so that your brain can sort of wind down and go to sleep. The other tip that I have for you is you should try to go to sleep consciously. And by that I mean like, lights out, eyes closed, head on pillow. And if you're not able to fall asleep within 15, 20 minutes, now you don't need to sit there and like stare at the clock. But you have a sense of how long 15, 20 minutes is. If you're not able to fall asleep,
Yeah.
get out of bed, go to another room and go read. Don't go on your phone, but do that, and don't go back to bed until you are tired. So I think that's going to be really critical, is to engage in some stimulus control, because the worst thing you can do is to be in bed and be awake for long periods of time, because you're kind of conditioning your brain to associate the bed with being awake or anxious or using the phone and being stimulated. So if you're not asleep within 15 to 20 minutes, and that's the same rule, by the way, if you wake up in the middle of the night. If you wake up after an hour, like you said, try to go back to sleep, do some breathing exercises, meditation, whatever it takes. If you're not able to do it for 15, 20 minutes, get out of bed, go to another room. Don't shine light in your eyes, so don't use like too much television or phone. Like I would say, just listen to music or read, and then only go back to bed when you're tired. Now, temporarily, you're gonna feel more tired because you may sleep actually less in the short term, but in the long term, it's gonna actually fix some of the sounds like insomnia that you're experiencing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let me ask you this real quick. Like, by my sleep pattern being off track, is that the reason why I experience like brain fog throughout the day?
Yeah, it's probably a contributing factor. Like, how much sleep are you getting total a night?
I'm gonna be completely honest with you, man. I say somewhere between no more than 6 hours, and I know to get like better testosterone, I need like 8 or 9 hours of sleep, but I'll be sleeping for like example, if I fall asleep right up at 12 o'clock on the dot, I would find myself waking up like at 5 something in the morning, taking a long time to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Then fall back to sleep, you get up like at like 9 or something like that.
Yeah, so if you're getting 6 or less hours of sleep, it is probably contributing to symptoms like brain fog. You're just not going to have, your optimal cognitive functioning, or your the way that you're thinking, if you're sleeping probably less than 7 hours a night. So yeah, I think you need to engage in some of the stimulus control, like I was talking about, in terms of getting out of bed within 15, 20 minutes if you're not able to fall asleep. If you're only able to sleep for 5 hours at a time, like you're sleeping between 12 and 5, like you were saying, what you're trying to do is improve your sleep efficiency, meaning the percentage of time that you're actually asleep in bed. So that's fine. If temporarily, like you're like, all right, I can fall asleep within 15 minutes at 12 o'clock, but my body naturally gets up at 5, great, get out of bed, try to fall asleep. Like I said, if you're not able to, then so be it. What's going to happen though is you're going to be tired, only sleeping, let's say, 5 hours that night. You're going to be able to fall asleep better the next night, and you'll probably be able to sleep in a little bit longer. So this is a long-term thing that you need to fix, and the best way you fix it is to make sure that you're actually asleep in bed, and if you're not asleep, to get out of bed, and restrict the amount of time that you're doing anything in bed except being actually asleep. So it's probably going to take a couple weeks, in fact, to fix it, but that's what you're trying to do. Is you might be only sleeping 5 hours one night, then it's 5 hours and 15 minutes the second night, 5 hours 30 minutes the third night, and you're extending the amount of time that you're allowed to essentially be in bed, so that you can work your way up to 7+ hours.
Yes, sir. So, how can you like give me some tips on like how to like naturally increase my REM sleep?
The REM will take care of itself. I wouldn't worry too much about the stages of sleep. What I would be focusing on is let's just start with the basics. Like I said, have a regular bedtime every night. Get your phone out of your bedroom. Don't be using your phone in bed. Turn on the downtime, and practice the stimulus control in terms of not being able to fall asleep within 15, 20 minutes. Just focus on those tips that I gave you, and then we can work on the more advanced stuff. I don't want to overwhelm you with too many things at a time, but I think you got some low-hanging fruit in terms of there's some easy stuff that you need to fix. It's not easy in terms of doing it, easier said than done, but I would focus on those things, and you probably will find that the quality and quantity of your sleep will naturally improve.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, and then like another thing too, like when I do get up out the middle of the sleep, I don't know why. I don't know this part. I don't know if this due to low testosterone, but I wake up thirsty, and I will like go downstairs to the kitchen and drink. I'll pump up instead of reaching for like a bottle of water. I would reach for a soda. You think that's healthy drinking a soda before like you go
No,
to sleep or something like that?
absolutely not. Yeah, it's too much sugar. It's gonna mess with your glucose levels, your insulin. Yeah, don't. I mean, you shouldn't drink soda. Period. It's just not good for your health.
Yeah.
Diet soda is better than regular soda if you're absolutely gonna do it. At least that's not going to spike your blood sugar level. So in the meantime, if you're weaning off of it, I would suggest that diet soda is not a bad interim solution. But yeah, in the long term, you just want to be drinking water. You don't want to drink too much water before bed because obviously it gets guys to get up and pee, and that messes with their sleep. So I always tell people stop drinking after dinner. You may be a little bit thirsty, but no one's going to die of thirst as long as you're adequately hydrating throughout the day. Just drink your liquids earlier in the day. You should be fine. But yeah, right before bed or in the middle of the night, it's fine to take a sip, but don't chug water if you're having trouble, like if you're one of those people who wakes up in order to go to the bathroom. So yeah, but definitely cut out the soda. There's no reason for that. It's not only bad for your health, but yeah, it's messing. It's probably it is contributing to it. And also, a lot of sodas have caffeine. I don't think people realize that Coca-Cola and things have caffeine, which is further messing with your sleep. So definitely not.
That's exactly what I drink. Coca-Cola.
Yeah, no. So you got to cut that out.
I'm glad you told me that. I just learned something new from you, man. I never heard of that.
Yeah, a little bit of Diet Coke during the day is fine, but yeah, and that does have caffeine, by the way. But you want to have it morning or early afternoon. You don't want to drink it past 2-3 o'clock. Don't have too much of it. And yeah, obviously, eventually find better choices. I always tell people don't drink their calories. Water, tea, and coffee are the only things you should generally be drinking. Maybe milk. But yeah, it should be basic stuff like that.
Yes, sir. Well, let me ask you one more thing before I get off the line. So you remember when I asked you, like, is it true that it can double testosterone in 30 days? The reason I asked that because I know that everybody is different.
Right.
I know everybody's different and stuff like that. So if my level's sitting at 341 right now, I just recently got lab, and I'm only 20 years old, and it's sitting at 341. I know that's kind of crazy for a 20-year-old.
Yep.
So if you think I keep like taking the protocol for like, cause I just started it not too long ago.
Right.
I don't feel the effects yet, but I know eventually I would feel it. But you think like, and the reason I said 90 days because I need to work on like diet and exercise and stuff like that. So that's why I gave myself 90 days.
Right.
So you think by the time the 90-day mark hit, I would at least be like down there at 9 or in the 8, so somewhere between that. If I like sleep better, eat better, work out better, and stuff like that.
Well, first we care more about your free testosterone than your total testosterone. So if
my free testosterone was at 7 point something. I forgot the exact number. It was 7 point something.
Yeah, that may be on a different unit of measurement. Is probably 7D, not 7. But yeah, if you know your SHBG levels, I can calculate it for you. In any case, we focus more on free testosterone. It should increase quite a bit within, like I said, within 30 days. But you got to fix the other stuff too. Like I said, the number one thing, honestly, I think you can do in the short term is fix your sleep and maybe just clean up some of the bad parts of your diet, like just the soda, for instance. Just those two things alone. Stop drinking soda, fix your sleep. That will, if you're sleeping at least an extra hour a night, you're going to get a 10 to 15% boost just from the extra hour of sleep. And then the medication will obviously give you a 50 to 150 or 1.5 to 2.5x boost. So yeah, I would say do as much as you can in the first 30 days and then test your levels. And if there's still room for improvement, you can keep trying and see where you can go from there.
Yes, sir. So you just answered my question without me even asking. I was gonna ask you like what the exact number when you say 1.5 to 2.5, but you just told me.
Yeah, so if let's say your free testosterone, I don't know what it is exactly, but I'm guessing from what you're saying it's around 70.
On the lab work, when I had received it back to my email, it was like I didn't see no 70. I saw like 7 point. It was a 7.3 or something like
Yeah,
that.
I think you're probably looking at the LH or something else. But let's just say for the sake of hypothetical, if it's 70, yeah, you should see it go up to like between 100 and 200, or let's say, roughly speaking. That's about a 1.5 to 2.5x increase. So anything within that range, I would say, would be a pretty nice boost, essentially. And you probably will feel better, although I would say a lot of what's probably keeping you from feeling better is your sleep. Unfortunately, if you're not sleeping enough, there's no medication that's going to make you feel good. There's no magic antidote to sleep deprivation. Your mood and your energy and everything else is just always going to be poor if you're getting 6 or less hours of sleep a night, and there's no medication that will ever fix that. So you got to fix your sleep, and then I think you'll start noticing the benefits a lot more. When you're sleeping 7+ hours, your mood, your hunger, a lot of these things will fix themselves, and then you'll really find the benefits much more noticeable. So do both hand in hand, and I'll see you on the coaching channel online if you need additional help.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. All right, so somebody had a question about, I'm currently on TRT. My blood test would show my levels are normal. Do I have to quit my TRT in order to prove low T to be approved by this program? So no, we're not a type of program that proves that you qualify based on a cutoff of low T. That's typically more reserved for testosterone replacement therapy where they want you below 300. Because of our protocol, how safe it is, we treat symptoms, not numbers. It depends on if you have room for improvement in terms of your symptoms. That's a lot more important. So you don't have to sit there and try to be low T or suppress your levels in order to qualify. Your doctor will look at your levels and your symptoms, and there's a lot of flexibility in terms of their ability to make their own decision. We don't guarantee everything, but I think most people qualify if there's room for improvement. And these days, unfortunately, most guys have room for improvement. Second, you can't be on TRT in our protocol. Our protocol is an alternative to TRT. In fact, it increases testosterone just as much as TRT, so there's no point of doubling up on it. So you do have to discontinue your TRT, generally for a week or two. It depends on if you have one of those long-acting testosterone esters, then you need to be off for 2 weeks. If it's a short-acting testosterone that you're using, a week is usually sufficient. The point is, you need to be out of your system before you start the program. Your testosterone will naturally be low because you're suppressed coming off of TRT, but that's essentially what your body's able to produce on its own. So we need to have a clean lab value so we know what your before levels are before we can look at your after levels. So that's what I would say there. All right, looks like we got another person on Zoom, so I'll bring them up to chat. I think we're connecting to the audio right now. Hey there, can you hear me yet? It looks like it's still connecting. All right, in the meantime, are there any YouTube questions while we get this gentleman connected? Oh, there we go. Looks like that came through. Hi there.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Dr. Cam. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I can hear you.
Perfect. How are you doing today?
I'm Matthew.
Hi there.
I'm great, and I'm really thankful to have your time.
My pleasure.
I'm gonna probably spend. I'm gonna pull over for a second. I'm bringing my kid home from daycare.
Okay.
And I saw this. I saw your invite to all the Maximus subscribers, and I said,
Yep.
You know what? I got to talk to this gentleman because I haven't done this yet, and I probably have 1 or 2 questions. But I'm going to take 5 minutes. I could pick your brain for 5 hours. Okay.
Well, we'll do 5 minutes
right.
today, but you can always call in later.
Oh yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm going to give you in a brief picture, a thumbnail of me. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm 53 years old. I'm usually, the last couple of decades, if I ever needed to strip fat off my body and kind of build just some quality looking muscle, I've always had a good diet approach and a good cross training approach to do it. Mm-hmm. But now, 52, 53 years old, the last year or so, I've needed to lose some weight and get myself in shape. And everything I've been doing, it's not really working anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not really, like I'll lose some weight and I won't gain a lot of muscle or get that, not that I'm trying to gain a lot of muscle, but just get the muscle quality looking right.
What's your height and weight right now?
I'm 5'11", and I'm hovering at about 185 pounds. Mm-hmm. And normally I I work myself down into the 170 or below range, and I'm very comfortable at that weight.
Yep.
But I only stay there if I'm honoring a very clean diet and I'm consistent with all of my training.
Okay. So do you feel like you have about 15 pounds to lose?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I think right now my diet and my training is actually very good. It's very consistent. It's just that it's not sparking. It's not popping like it used to.
What do you think is getting in the way? Sounds like you've been where you need to be before. You know what you need to do.
I have.
But something is blocking you. What do you think that is?
Well, it's a great question. It's nice to be able to talk to a medical professional. When COVID started, I don't know, and this is a good 2 years and 3-4 months ago. I don't know if I got COVID. I never tested positive for it.
Right.
But when COVID started, I had some sort of an infection. I don't know if it was viral. I don't know if it was bacterial. But my body, I lost about 35 pounds, and I had strange symptoms that I've never experienced in my life. I was in and out of the doctor's office. This all lasted about the first 4 months of COVID, from about middle of February 2020 through to May, June. Things kind of normalized. I lost 35 pounds of fat and muscle, and I never experienced muscle loss before like that ever in my life. And I had scans. I had many blood panels, so many blood tests, all different types of scans, cranial, brain scans, chest scans, liver, stomach, kidneys. Everything was clean. It just, and we never could get to the bottom. I saw cancer specialists. I saw kidney specialists.
Yeah.
And then my general practitioner, who kind of kept just sending me here and there, and we never.
Did they ever come to a diagnosis?
Nope. Never.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I know it's frustrating to both have obviously a medical condition that really throws you for a loop and makes you lose a lot of weight, and second to not really figure out what's going on. Has it resolved now?
Yeah, I think for the most part it's resolved, but it's interesting, Dr. Tam. I feel good. I feel very good. I'm not that person I was before that event. Whatever that was. I used to sleep 8 hours every night, no problem. I used to have ultra consistent, regular bowel movements every day. My muscle tissue has never fully recovered. It's recovered, but it's not the same body that it was before this event.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, and you can, I don't know what happened with you. Obviously leave that up to your diagnosticians, but if you make the analogy of getting an injury, it sounds like it was sort of analogous to that, right? When someone gets hospitalized, they often lose a lot of the muscle mass that they have because they're just not working out as much. They're sedentary, and their body's kind of fighting something off. So if you kind of you had a course of an illness or an injury, if you will. It obviously threw you for a loop, and it can take a while for the body and also the behavioral habits to kind of come back in terms of what you were describing around the sleep. So have you kind of focused on that yet? And is that something that you benefit from in terms of us helping you out with?
Well, what was kind of interesting too is when all of that was happening, there was this. I pulled over, so I want you to know that I'm safe and I'm not going to run into anyone, or no one's running into me. There was a total psychological component to that experience. I mean, I was almost like having a nervous breakdown because I was so paranoid about what could possibly be going wrong and why don't we have any answers. And the stress of that also contributed to this weight loss And I was afraid to even work out, Dr. Cam, at that time. I wouldn't even go in the gym because I felt like I wasn't even physically or psychologically strong enough to be in a fitness setting. So ever since I started kind of recovering from whatever that was, I started to feel normal again. And, I do sleep well. I don't sleep the same. I do have regular bowel movements, but it's not the same. I know it. It's subtle. It's a nuance, if you will. For a while, for a temporary amount of time, I was on I don't know, maybe it was Zoloft or something my doctor put me on to calm me down.
Right.
He gave me some sleeping pills to help me kind of start sleeping normal again. I don't need that stuff. I don't use that on a regular basis anymore, but I have, for the last year, I've started very much focusing on my fitness.
Good.
And for the last 4 months, I've been focusing on diet. So I feel, but I saw your product and I'm like, I'd love a little edge.
Sure.
I'd love something to help me. And the one thing I wanted to ask you about, two things specifically. One is, the general picture I've shared with you, but how effective is your product when it comes to, and remember I'm 53, so like I want to reduce belly fat.
Yeah.
That's an area. I mean, I want to get all the fat off the body. I'm not obese, and I'm very fit. I mean, I can do my 5-mile trail. I'm playing 3 sets of tennis. I power yoga, boxing, whatever. I'm very fit right now. I feel great in my workouts. Is your product great for belly fat?
It's not. There isn't a lot of research to support it for that use case, to be honest with you. It's not a sort of stimulant or thermogenic agent that specifically targets fat or fat loss. So I would say if that's the primary reason, it's not going to be super targeted for that. In fact, usually what people experience is they actually gain weight, but it's a lean mass or muscle that they're gaining. So if they're trying to see the number on the scale go down, it's obviously going to probably go in the other direction if you're lifting weights. Second, sometimes people do experience a little bit of water gain. It's not, it's just water weight essentially. So it's not necessarily like leaning people out. Now, that being said, we do have folks on our protocol who do lose a lot of weight, but the reason they're losing weight is because they have increased energy and drive from their testosterone being optimal. Now, what you do with that energy and drive, obviously, if you channel in a way that improves your diet, you're working out more, that can lead to a lot of fat loss indirectly. So that's basically the conclusion that I would say. I would think it would be irresponsible for me to promise this, that it's going to be like this magical fat loss agent. It's not directly. But the increased testosterone, if you channel that in a way to really focus on, especially the diet, like I would say 80% of all fat loss is honestly diet and sleep. Actually, both of those are actually more important than exercise, in my opinion. And I think the scientific literature backs that. So if you can sort of take the energy and the coaching to focus on those two things, that's going to give you a lot of bang for your buck. So it can help, but it's going to help indirectly.
Okay. The other question I have for you is, one of the things that we learned about me 2 years ago in all these doctors' offices was that I have a small tumor on my pituitary. Okay, one of these. It's a micro. It's not a macro, but it's a micro benign tumor that. And I'm wondering if you're familiar with what those are. Yeah. And if this drug is at all a problem for something like that.
What I would do is I would run it by the doctor that gave you that diagnosis, because there are different forms and the severity, and so I wouldn't want to overstep and make sure. Okay. But yeah, they should be familiar with, if they don't know enclomiphene, they certainly know the parent drug Clomid, and you can just say, hey, look, this is the purified, essentially isomer of it. Would you feel comfortable with me, taking this essentially, and have them kind of give the thumbs up. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. Fair enough. That's all I had. Those are my only questions.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, I'm sorry you went through so much. I think a lot of people, you weren't alone during COVID, who kind of faced the struggles with illness and obviously some of the long-term effects from going through a course of illness like that. So yeah, sorry that you went through that. I'm glad that you're getting a little bit back on track. And certainly, if your doctor clears you to be on our protocol, hopefully we can help you get you back up to the levels that you were at before. And I think, having you back at a lean, mean, 170-ish is definitely possible if you channel your energy in the right way, and hopefully be able to work with you on that.
I appreciate your help. The last thing I want to say is one day I might go to work for you. Okay? That's all I got to say.
That'd be great.
I'm in Northern California. I work in the Silicon Valley. I'm in technology.
Cool.
But one day, just studying your product and your company, I just like so many things that I've seen. So
awesome.
Maybe one day I'm going to be your employee.
Much appreciated.
Okay?
Check. Keep abreast on our job board, and would love to have good folks like you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Cam. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Take care. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
All right. So our time is up for today. We actually ran about 11 minutes over. So thank you everyone who is joining us. And we'll catch you next week. We'll go back to our normal time at 6 o'clock Pacific time. And thanks everyone for all your great questions.